But this I enjoyed, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the thing about a landscape is it evokes a scene that you recognize somewhere. And so I'm going to go as far as to say that I don't even think that landscapes are bonsai. Landscapes like this are firmly penjing. So penjing is far more Chinese art form, Japanese far more classic bonsai art form, bonsai. So what I've done is I've brought this along, and even this group, Pyracantha, Firethorn, I've chosen this pot because the pot is far more a penjing type style. Does it make sense? Right? The trees are far more penjing than classical bonsai. Now, you could very, very easily create, I'll talk about this one in a second, you could very, very easily create a landscape with this, which would look quite pleasing. And you could call it Psyche. What is the difference between Psyche and landscape? I don't really know that there is one. So the minute you take a classical group and start to put some rocks in it, stones in it, figurines in it, create something like this, you're now creating a landscape. So the Japanese are incredibly set on certain ways. So for instance, here's a really good example. If you go and buy trees in Japan, anything 20 centimeters and below is extremely expensive. Anything 40 centimeters and above is extremely expensive. Anything between 20 centimeters and 40 centimeters is actually pretty cheap. So the categories are Shoin, and Shoin there's an entire, one of the three biggest shows in Japan is the Gafu show, and that is only Shoin. That's all it is. And there's a big market for that, smaller trees, especially because real estate is at a real prime in Japan, and people have smaller spaces. So smaller trees, but the classification is 20 centimeters and less. If it's more than 20 centimeters, can't put it on a show. So the challenge is to keep trees at under 20 centimeters, and they're extremely high valued. And then the bigger trees, so you get a kifu and a chuin size, but even on a show, those really win anything. That's normally where in your space of 900 to a meter or 1.2 meters, you put two trees instead of one tree that is 40 centimeters and above. So that in between, there's no value, which is quite interesting. In this country, we don't even have a tree, put it on show. You know, it's kind of like that. Okay, so I was really grateful to have been able to get my hands on this piece of marble. It is marble, solid marble, so this thing weighs a ton. It came from Erika Köhler, who got it imported. And her husband Fred made this little stand for this stretcher for it because it's that heavy. So what is the defining feature? So if Marina says there's got to be a defining feature, by the way, this was the 23rd or 25th of September 2023 is when I put this together. So it's not even, it's 2 growing seasons, but not even 2 years. It's come a long way. And all I've done since then, and Maria, just to remind you what happened that day, I had 3 hours to put it together, unassisted. So I didn't have a choice. It's not a case of it's going to take him a long time. I didn't have a choice. But they've done incredibly well. The defining feature here is what? This little thing here. So the idea behind the marble, and if you Google anything with a marble penjing landscape, is to create the idea of a water body. So the white represents the water. So this would be, so you'll see them with those landscapes with those very tall sort of little islands dotted on the water. So you can do quite a lot with the marble. You can have less landscape and more water. Or more water and less landscape. It's completely up to you. But that's the whole idea. So this would be a rocky sort of shore, little bay area, or it could be a stream coming down, flowing into the sea or into a lake or something. But the whole point of this is to create an expanse of water. So if you Google, and you really should, there's some unbelievable scenes out there that people have created from on the marble. It's quite something. So I was very happy to get my hands in it, and I accepted the challenge. So now what I'm going to do today, and I kind of figured I don't want to create something because it's the wrong time of the year to go and create a landscape planting, is I'd like to chat to you a little bit about this, but then I'm going to clean it up. So if it looks messy, it's meant to look messy. I've done nothing to this since probably for about 3-4 months. And what I now need to do is come in and clean up. And I want to talk to you about cleaning up your bonsai at this time of the year because it's a very topical thing to talk about right now. And I think I can give you value talking about a landscape and also a different topic at the same time. Is that cool? Good? Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about, so it is Psyche, it is landscape. Let me start here. Okay. So this is important. Can I go and put this rock into this planting? No, I absolutely can't. Why? Because it sticks out like a sore thumb. Why? It's not the same rock as those rocks, right? Okay, so you might say the color is a glaring difference. Problem is, it isn't sourced at the same place. It's not even the same material, the rock material. It's not the same. You don't want to mix your different rocks, right? So this is the same color. Can I put that in? Let's find a nice place. Can I put that in? No, it looks like I put it in. But even if I didn't put it in, even if I put it somewhere else, can I put this in with this? Why? Right. The texture of the rock is not the same as the others. So really, really important. Once you've decided that you're going to go with a texture, a color, a certain type of rock, you don't want to mix them. That's really important. This needs to feel believable. And Marina is 100% correct in terms of what Stefan said about placing rocks. You don't want to place rocks so they look like they were just placed there. What is the most valuable asset to a bonsai? Age and time, right? So yes, it's a tree. We know that part. So you're actually not entirely wrong, Stefan. But it's age, and I think that's the thing that we forget. It's age. So, and your job is to create the illusion of age. And if a stone is just placed on a surface, there's zero illusion of age. Whereas these look like they're aged. Why? Because the moss has grown over them, and because they look like they're solid, and they look like they're embedded. The trees. How are we going to make these look older? Because that's you should be looking at your trees all the time, thinking, how do I make these trees look older? How do I create the illusion of age? It literally is the most important part. And again, in Japan, it is the most valued characteristic of a tree. You can have a spectacular tree, but if it doesn't have this feeling of age, the value is less. I don't think we spend enough time on trying to figure out how to create age in our trees. That's very important. So it's the taper, size of the trunk, but literati might not necessarily be that. But it's the bark, it's the texture, it's taper in your branches. So branches with no taper, this thick piece of branch or branch, and you'll see it all the time. I think we try and rush trees a lot. You'll see it a lot with people who've grown an olive, for instance, and it's an olive that has been collected. And the branch has been allowed to grow. The first branch that comes out of this olive trunk has been allowed to grow, and the branch is that long. It's got other little branches along it, tertiary branches, secondary branches, but the initial primary branch is that long. You did it wrong. There's no taper. There can't be any taper. So you want to grow it really, really long and cut it right back. Now it's thick. Now you're growing the secondaries out. You let them grow really long, cut them back. Now they're just a little bit thinner than the one. And you're creating taper. And that is the illusion of age. That's what age, that's what that process does. And when we rush it and we try and create a bonsai too quickly, we miss that whole feeling of, this tree's arrived. Does it make sense? Right. So these trees still look really, really young. How can we make them look older? Cut them back. Thank you very much. Sacrificial branches. So there have been a couple of places where you'll notice that I have let them grow out, mainly because I can't move this on my own. So this kind of stays where it is in my garden. It doesn't get turned. Fortunately, it's at an angle where it gets some sun, but I don't really move it much, so I don't really do much to it. So there are a couple of things that we can do here. The minute we've got a thin trunk and low branches at the bottom, or really thinner, lower branches at the bottom, immediately it starts to look younger. So part of what I want to do here is lift some of the canopy a bit. And when I do that, it's going to automatically start to look a little bit older. So one or two of the things that I can do is get rid of some of the dense branching. So the more you recognize that the tree has thicker branches coming out of it, and the less it's this bush that has got undefined branches, the older the tree is going to look. So there are a couple of things that we can do. What else? There's one more thing. Now, the minute I take some of that moss away and I can start to reveal the nabari and some of the roots going into the soil, immediately the tree starts to look older. Make sense? So that's one of the most important parts of the bonsai, and it's where your eye goes immediately. So if I had to, and these are groups, so it's a little bit more difficult. But even this group, okay, let's just try this for a second. So what is a black background? So what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes. Everybody trust me? Close your eyes, close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes, close your eyes. When you open them, do not open them yet. When you open them, I want you to look at what I'm holding in my hands, and I want you to tell me where your eye goes first. So eyes closed, and look at the tree. Where do your eyes go? Do you get that? So most of your eyes would have hit probably this tree here. It's the first place your eyes go. Eyes have been trained to look at that. That's what we do. And naturally, it's subconscious. You don't even think about where your eyes are going. It's the first place your eye goes. And then your eyes read the tree. Where do they go next? So from there, they probably follow the line, but they probably follow the line through probably to this tree. So these ones actually get a little bit lost. But that's what happens, and I want you to practice doing that. So maybe in afterwards, you want to run around hundreds of trees and stand in front of them and close your eyes, open them and look, but get some perspective, because a lot of trees, they're very big, and if you stand here, it's hard. But when you've got some perspective, just start to think about what your eyes see first, because that should help you in designing your trees. Where does the eye go? Where's the movement of the tree? Where's the primary branch of the tree? So this too has also got, normally if you look at this from a distance, you will look at this tree first. That's the reason why I picked these two branches. They are low and hanging down, because I want you to look at the tree and then I want you to be invited in here. That's the intention. Make sense? So be aware of that. But that nabari, the base of your tree, those roots that are anchored in the soil, that's why that is so important, and you want to get that right. And once you've got that right, then you build from there. So just by getting rid of this moss at the bottom, and by opening up and probably removing all of the moss, I'm going to be able to create an illusion of age. And you might think, Richard, why on earth would you want to take off all this moss? It's one of the most important things that we need to do in wintertime. Why is that? Specifically with deciduous trees. Moisture to air out. Yes. In wintertime, I don't know about you, so this I was hoping it would have dried out. I have not watered this for almost a week. And it's wet. So that's not ideal. Does it make sense? You don't. So fortunately, this is planted in Akadama pumice. It was recycled soil. I think if you were there, you would have heard that. That's a nice thing about inorganic soil, is you can recycle it. But the drainage is phenomenal, and I don't have to worry about root rot. I'll never have to worry about root rot in that soil. But my roots are still very, very wet and they're soggy. So what I want to do is allow the roots and the soil to be able to air a little bit and to be able to dry out a little bit, and I don't want my roots sitting in water. Number two, specifically on trees that have got really nice bark, the minute you've got wet moss on them for the whole of winter, your bark starts to degenerate or starts to rot a little bit, and you lose some of the bark. That's not ideal for me either. Make sense? Would I have to put moss on this planting again, even if I take off all the moss? It's the best part of moss. Once you've got moss like this on here, you've got moss for good, unless it dries out completely. I won't have to re-moss it. And here's the best part. When I mossed this, I took moss, thicker moss, and it was on the day, and I placed it on the surface, which was on top of the roots, which means that everything's underground. When I take the moss off and I expose some of the roots and leave it, the moss is going to grow a little bit lower down in the planting. Does it make sense? So it's going to get a whole lot better. Okay, so that's what I'd like to do with this one. But before I get going, so what I've done, I have brought 4 rocks with me. Now, why would it be a good idea for me to create a penging landscape of this planting? So that's the back. It's also quite nice. That's the front. It's okay. But I've never really liked this planting. I've never felt that I got it right. That's the biggest issue with this, is that the spacing between specifically these trees here looks the same. How do I solve that? I just smack some rocks in here. How cool is that? So what I'm going to do, and you know what I did this morning? I played around a little bit. So it's something that I do. I would highly recommend it. I work. This I would also highly recommend, especially now. I work inside. I've got my bonsai little studio inside the house. And what's quite nice, it's a braai area. It was a patio that's been included into the house. And what's quite nice is that when I'm part of the house, so nobody can say, "Oh, Richard's in his garage. We never see him. He's doing that hobby. He's obsessed. He's fanatical," which I am. But I'm fanatical in the house. You know, at least I'm there. I'm part of the. You know, I am part of it. But what I did is I've got two screens, and they are blockout screens. But so when I'm not working on trees, the house is open. There are no screens. But when I'm working on trees, I want to have a blank background behind me. In fact, and there are hardly any criticisms that I've ever had to level against Suikerbos Bonsai Kai. But the one criticism I do have, please take it nicely, is that specifically when you're sitting there, it's very hard to see what's happening here because there isn't a blank background. And I would love that. That's one of the things that I really think you should invest in, is a black, whether it's something that you can pull down, but you would get so much out of what happens here because there's no noise. That's noise. And the second thing I would love is more light, because then you can see. So those are the two most important things about my studio, is the light. I've got a double LED. We can't even call those fluorescent lights because they're LED, right? But yeah, but I've got double, and then I've still got one of those ring lights that they use for, you know, for online stuff or whatever, and that's next to me, and that's above me. I couldn't have more light. It's so important, and I still have spotlights. I want to see what I'm doing, but I bring down a grey blockout blind behind me, and then because a lot of light comes in, natural sunlight comes in, especially this time of the year, I battle with that. I'll pull that one down. So I've got a really controlled environment where I can see what I'm doing. Because the minute you are working, and if I'm working on these trees now, I'm going to really struggle because I've got your faces behind me. It makes sense. It's one. You'll up your game with your bonsai immediately. And then the next thing I do is whenever I'm working on trees, I take photographs. So I worked on a pine a couple of weeks back. I counted 42 photographs that I took of that pine before the last photograph where I was happy. Because nothing tells you the truth faster than a photograph. Nothing humbles you faster than a photograph. You think a tree is amazing, you take a photograph, oh. Yeah, I can't post that on the internet. That's terrible. But it's one of the best things you can do. So what I did this morning, I took 8 photographs with this. 8 different rock placings with these 4 rocks to look at what to try and find what I like best. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to recreate it, but what I'll do is just that. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to place them, we're going to turn them around, you're going to have a look, and I'll give you a couple of options. Now, there are 3 of these rocks that are very, very similar in color, very, very similar in texture, different sizes. Important, you want different sizes. This one here, although it is also Pelindaba, it's got a little bit more gray in it. So it might stand out a bit, but I think it's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And the reason I like these is because they've got grooves. So I can wrap them around a trunk, which looks really nice. So now it'll look as if the trees have actually grown through and amongst the rocks, which again is going to make it look older, if that makes any sense. So if you've got rocks that are just placed, and they're not close to trunks, or it's got to look as if the rocks were there first, because trust me, the rocks were there first, and then the trees arrived afterwards. That's kind of what you want to do. You don't want to make it look like you placed the rocks after the fact. And this, I didn't get that quite right. The only place where I do like that is along my foreshore. So then I put a little one here, because otherwise it's probably a little bit too much. And I can't get these into the soil just like the way I would want to. But I mean, that immediately changes the look of the forest, and actually probably looks better. Yes? Do we notice? Because now the rocks are filling in some of the gaps, so it doesn't look quite as badly balanced. You'll notice that this rock is still, the movement for this forest is this way, right? So movement is, it's a sweep. This rock is helping that movement. Doesn't it? Can you see that? Make sense? Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different. So let's put a bigger rock on this side. And then we're going to go with this one. This one just fits in, I know. There we go. So now that looks, and I'm going to show you, I want to do one or two that maybe don't look so great. And you can tell me why that it looks so great. I can even go with all the rocks on the one side, which then gives me a little bit more negative space on this side. So that helps the movement, right? I don't like it as much. I don't know what you think. It's too heavy on this side. But will you agree that because it's heavy on this side, it makes the flow, we look at the negative space on this side, yes? But you kind of get stuck here, am I right? A little bit too heavy. You think it looks fine? Thank you. Look, I don't think it's bad, but I think the other one was better. Okay, let me do one more. Oopsie. Yes, they are rocks. Okay, so where I had this one, so it was really leaning. Oh, why would I not? I won't put that face to the front. Why? Because obviously it was cut off there or broken off there. This is such a lack of. The reason I keep this rock is because I want to put a little maple over it, root of a rock. But I might lose it into the little penging forest here. There we go. So let's go with this one here. I'm really messing up my moss. Yeah, that's what that. There we go. This is the one I didn't like at all. Okay, so if I did something like that, let's just whack that in as well. Right. So what do we think of that? Too much happening. The rock starts to overpower the group. And if I look at the space of the pot, how much is taken up by rock, how much is tree, how much is moss, it doesn't look quite as balanced to me. Very heavy. And I'm also not seeing enough, in my mind, of the base of the trunks. So I think what I'm basically trying to show you is that there are so many options, but what you're wanting to try and create, I think, let me try and go with the one that I like the most. You want to keep the movement of your group. Ideally, I would have put the rocks in when I put the trees in. These trees were incredibly difficult to take apart and put together again. I think I've tried this group like 4 times, and I just have struggled because there are such violent movements and contortions, and that's I think why I just opted with a let's go penging. There's nothing classical about this. This is my last attempt, and then I'm going to start cleaning. Let's leave that one out. Let's go with this one and that one. That's right. There we go. Yes, the movement and the grain is so important because that's how they got weathered, right? Remember that rocks are created by weathering. This isn't the one I liked, but anyway, it's also not bad. So tell me a story. Okay, make sure all the elements tell the same story. I put 2 trees in, this one, and wasn't these two? Might have been this one. But I added 2 trees here, and I added 2 trees here. I added this tree here. There was a big gap, and I added this one or this one of them. And then the other thing I did, and that's what a camera did for me. If you were there on the day, this big rock here was here, and this one. So there were 2 here. It looked like this big solid cliff, and it was really overpowering, and it didn't give me the look that I wanted, and I still haven't got it right. So I'm going to take some of the moss away, and you're going to see how much rock there is. This moss is right over the rocks. But there are a couple of things I'm not entirely happy with. If I did this thing again, this whole side would have moved back so that I would have some more space for the water around here. This side I like, but this front section here, I've never really loved. Okay, winter cleanup and deciduous trees. When do we do it? So it's where most of the bonsai professionals do it in Europe and in the States, and all of them in Japan. As soon as the leaves start to change color and drop. Why? It's all about sap, right? So what's happening at that time is the food factories, the leaves, have lost their ability to process and synthesize sugars, right? So they're not photosynthesizing, and they change color. Why? Because the sugars are receding. That's what that color change comes from a sugar receding out of the leaves and going to be stored in the tree, right? So it's going to be stored. Now at that time, your sap is receding. It is a time when the tree is going to lose the least amount of sap with you making winter pruning cuts and cleaning up in a tree. It will lose the least amount of sap. But what happens at that time, anybody who's pruned a trident maple or a Japanese maple just before bud break will notice that even if you just take little things, your tree has got little droplets on the end. Every single cut you make, it is now losing sap. Why would you want your tree to lose sap at the most important time? The tree needs sap. When it's just about to grow again, now you want to just leach it of the sap. So doing it at that time, there's no loss of sap at all. There's a second very important reason. So this I would never have left this late. My deciduous trees have all been done almost a month ago. What is the next important reason? There are three. So here's the next thing. If I left this tree like this, every single one of the buds on this tree are now asking for sap. The tree has to send sap to every single one of the buds that are sitting on the tree. Once the sap's there and they're waiting to bud, we now then go and cut it off, which is wasting all that energy that the tree is now prepared for buds that we don't even want. So the theory is, take off the buds that you don't want, so the tree has more sap to give to the buds that you do want. You'll have a much stronger budding where you want it on the tree. Does it make sense? So what we think in South Africa, and I don't know where this came from, is when we do this, the trees are going to get hurt in winter time, and then we're going to have dieback, and we're going to lose some of the stuff that we wanted. At least if we've left it, we can cut off the little dead ends. Does that really happen? No, it doesn't. So the tree's dormant, and it's coming out of dormancy. If they're dead ends, it's for another reason, not because it's winter and it's left on. The third reason, anybody want to give me a third reason? Third reason is, it is literally, because of the sap flow, the best time to wire a deciduous tree. Why? Because the sap is receded, and because the cambium isn't slippery against the wood of the tree. So in the same way with the conifer, you don't wire and do drastic bends in the middle of summer. Why? Because the tree is growing. And what happens when you bend them is that cambium literally slides off the wood, and you can lose branches. The deciduous trees aren't too different. So it's a brilliant time to wire. And then the last reason is, you can see what you are wiring. Because the tree has got nothing on it, it's the best time. So you'll notice, and I'm sure if you've seen some of the videos that come out of Japan and some of the other places, is that because they're cutting trees that are already finished, they'll literally take scissors, those bigger scissors, and they will prune maples and take leaves off like this. And you look at it and you think, are you mad? What are you doing? They're not worried, because all they're doing is increasing ramification, but they'll go in at the beginning of autumn and go and clean up. Okay, now that just gave you the clue. What is the most important part of a winter cleanup with a deciduous tree? Two things. Number one, we can see the tree. I get away with murder with this tree. Number one, because it's pending, and pending anything goes, right? So it actually really doesn't matter. But because it's an evergreen, I can hide flaws. I can have branches that might cross. I can have thicker branches, inverse taper. I can get away with it because it is hidden, right? With a deciduous tree, I can get away with nothing, because when it's bare, nothing is hidden. So what's really important is wintertime, when nothing's hidden, I go and make sure that everything is right. So that's a very important thing to do in winter cleanup. The second thing is what? To set the tree up for the next season, right? So every single year, this forest, even if I cut it back all the time and I pinch it, it's still going to increase by 5 to 10 centimeters, around about 2.5 to 5 centimeters, even if I'm pinching it, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every single season. And eventually, I'm going to get a tree that is long, lanky branches with incredible ramification, but the foliage is far away from the trunk. Okay, so how do I prevent that from happening? I come back in and I do judicious pruning. I make sure that I open up so that I'm giving branches space to grow. The light is going to hit all of the branches, and I'm allowing the buds on the inside of the tree to get enough sunlight to stimulate the buds, so I'm not losing the growth on the inside of the tree. And if we don't do that with our deciduous trees, we are after ramification. We want ramification. But too much ramification, and the tree is going to start to die back on the inside. So there's a very, very important balance between how much ramification you've got and making sure the tree is going to survive. One of the questions I asked Hannes, so if you walk around his garden, you'll see some of the best ramified Celtis trees in South Africa, literally. But his problem is, I said to him, when are you going to clean this up? I'm going to do it when I pot in springtime. He has to go in and clean up, otherwise that ramification, the foliage is going to get further and further and further and further away from the tree. There's not enough lighting on the inside. It's getting too dense, and he needs to clean it up. You'll also notice in some of the patches, and I know he's aware of this, which is why I can tell him that there are on some of the trees, you'll see where there's a couple of coarse branches coming through. So they're long, very strong branches that have grown through that are thicker than the ramification at the end. So what does he need to go and do? Cut back far in, because that's now a really strong branch that he doesn't want. It's going to start to ruin his ramification. Okay, best time of the year to do it is when the tree's got no leaves.